This is a re-recording of the talk I gave at Atlassian Summit 2016, and apologies for the folks who couldn't get into the room because there wasn't enough space. Hopefully this recording will make it up to you. So I opened the talk by tongue-in-cheek asking how many of the people in the room worked for companies with at least 2 employees, and then to keep their hands up if they worked at companies with employees at 2 or more locations. And of course, everybody's hand went up in the air and stayed up. And the point was simply to illustrate that we are all currently working in teams, and we now live in a distributed reality. Which is really what we're all about. At Brickit, we design and build collaboration hubs for fast-growing and Fortune 500 companies. As an Atlassian expert partner, we've been doing this since 2005, focusing on Confluence. In fact, we were the publisher of the first Confluence add-on in the marketplace. So we provide services and products that really try to bring teams to work together using the Atlassian platform. So in the session, we're going to learn about employee engagement and the cultural factors that affect it. We're going to talk about a concept called information toxicity and what you can do about that, and also present some resources that we have that can help you successfully launch your collaboration platform. And that's a lot to squeeze into 15 minutes, so we're going to jump right into the challenges around teamwork. Now, we've already established that everyone works in a distributed environment, but I also then asked for a show of hands of how many people in the room worked for companies that had more than one system for storing information. And again, of course, everybody's hand went up. And that's kind of a terrible result, right? Because we all know that information silos suck. And again, that's why we deploy tools like Atlassian Confluence. But beyond just the systems, we also have to think about the different types of users. So I like to tell the one about the 2 software engineers that walk into a bar, immediately pull out their cell phones and start texting their sales and marketing buddies to come and join them for a drink. What, you haven't heard this one? Well, of course not, because it never happens, right? These people don't talk. And the point is that even when we solve the systems problems, we have an even more important problem, and that is getting people to come together. Now, we're oftentimes dealing with human resources or corporate communications, usually in conjunction with marketing, because we're talking about the entire organization when we're doing this. And for these teams, this is one of their biggest concerns, right? Because they know that employees are the ones that are driving that teamwork and that function, so it really boils down to employee engagement. Well, we know why that's important, but let's take a look at some statistics. All right, Gallup studied a lot of people, and they told us what we already know, that engaged employees tend to be more successful, they do more, they tend to stick around longer, and they screw up a lot less. So no problem, you say. We've got people, I can walk around, see them working, I see the emails flying around. They're engaged, right? Or are they? Because Gallup also tells us that by looking at employees, they find that 71% are not engaged. All right, again, we can shrug that off saying, no problem, we're going to deploy Confluence and we're just going to get everyone to use it. And in fact, here's this totally scientific graph that shows the relationship between increasing user adoption and the rise of employee engagement. So there, you just get everyone to use it, instant employee engagement, and let's go home, right? But there's this. Because Forrester tells us that 70% of IT projects fail. Interestingly, not because of lack of features or poor technology, but due to lack of user adoption. Now, wait a minute, because we just said that user adoption is key for employee engagement, so shouldn't we try to fix this? Well, after a lot of years in the business, it turns out that we discovered that employees are actually human beings. And if we want to use technology to reach human beings, we need to deal with some cultural factors first. Now, over the years, we've identified 3, and the good news is that you already know what they are. And the first one is that people are not comfortable in places where they feel like they don't belong. Now, our shorthand for this is tribalism, and if you've ever gone to a football game wearing the wrong jersey, you may know something about this. Okay, the second one is that people are change averse. And I really don't feel like I need to spend a whole lot of time telling you this one. And the third one is that people avoid things that are hard, right? You know this, you've seen this in your organizations. So the moral of the story is that consciously or not, every user that logs in for the first time is going to ask questions like, do I belong here? Does this feel like a change from what I was doing this morning or yesterday? Is this going to be hard? Well, I'd like to show you some quick screenshots of how we can solve this with Confluence. We're starting off with the documentation for ThemePress, which is our add-on that makes a lot of this possible. And what you can see about it is that it feels like a website first. It's deferring learning. It eliminates the need for training, right? I like to ask at this point to raise your hand if you know how to surf the web, and of course everybody does. And the point is that, if you have things that are familiar and you're showing people menus and headers and footers that reflect the company, you're going to know how to use that and not require the training, right? So the point is to defer that complexity, shield users from the full Chrome, the full knobs and dials of the platform, and then add bridges so that you can get from the familiar to the advanced later, like a simplified toolbar, wizard-based interactions, and drag and drop. Okay, so here's a division at a sportswear manufacturer. This is where scientists and manufacturing come together to envision and design and figure out how to make leading innovations for the next generation of high-tech fabrics, apparel, shoes, and what have you. As you can see here, there's a very strong brand representation, but also very simple presentation. People can navigate by smacking these large buttons. There's also a very large number of teams and projects that are going on in any given time, and they're very fluid and change. So we've included a feature in our product that allows you to navigate hundreds of complex organized things with just a few clicks. Again, it's shielding users from complexity, but still making it accessible. Another example of an intranet launch, a new brand, a company where culture is king, and very stringent branding and functional requirements. This was rolled out to thousands of users, so managers and engineers, salespeople, everyone's on it, and it's their go-to resource for onboarding, learning, resources, even finding out about that new employee that joined. Okay, another site. Again, what you're seeing here is not Confluence concepts coming through. What you're seeing are the companies very strong. So you're not asking first-time or casual users to know what a Confluence space is, or how that differs from a page tree, or what's a space label versus a page label, or how to use the dashboard, or learn about macros, or any of that stuff. Okay, so to summarize, we can break down those cultural barriers by using design to make users feel like they belong. We can present familiar stuff to minimize the sense of change, right? And we can make it feel like a website first, deferring complexity, so we take away the feelings of how hard things are going to be. So then we're done, right? We've addressed the cultural factors. We get to go home. Well, maybe not, because once we've solved the user adoption problem, Harvard's been studying this, and they found this paradox, that enterprise-wide collaboration actually causes employee disengagement, right? That's really upside down. So what's going on? Well, it's kind of simple. In a complex organization, there's a lot of stuff. So it's a huge burden for people to be able to absorb, codify, sort, organize, find. There's just a ton of content. And getting drowned in that is something that Harvard calls information toxicity. Right? Well, of course, being Harvard, they're going to call it something like that. But the basic problem is really a simple trade-off between the cost, on the one hand, right? How much time is this going to take to learn? How much hassle is there to use the system if it's cumbersome or not working for me? And so on. And that's balanced against the potential benefits you might get. So maybe new ideas that I can find, or some shortcuts that I can learn, etc. Right? Is it worth it? I don't know. Everybody has to decide. Okay, going forward, I have some really scary numbers for you. Okay, the first one is really bad, and I tell you, if this doesn't scare you, this one's going to be twice as bad, right? Because what they mean is that it takes from 1 to 2 years for new hires to become fully productive. Now, 2 years, right? That is insane, because these are people that you are paying, right? And these two make the first pair even scarier. Because what they mean is that millennials, or people under the age of 35, stay in their jobs just 2.3 years on average. Right now, combine those last two statistics, and it means that most of your employees are underperforming most of the time, which is really great, right? No, it's not, because we need to get them up to speed faster, which means reducing information toxicity. So how do you know if you're suffering from this? Well, you do know if you're hearing questions like this. People are saying things like, I don't have time to learn the system, or I can't find anything, or I don't know where to put stuff, right? Or I don't know what's going on in the organization, what's everybody doing? Or my personal favorite is the I'm drowning in garbage complaint. Right, so if you're hearing these kinds of questions from your users or these comments, you know that they're suffering from toxicity and they're not able to engage. So what can we do about that? Well, there's a handful of strategies we can think about. Right, the first one is to flatten learning curves. And we actually just went through all of that, right? Because we've made users feel at home, we've minimized the sense of change, and we've made it not hard. So at least we've got one down. Okay, let's go to the next strategy. So to make content easy to find, easy to organize, you need to consider something we call information architecture. Well, what is that? Information architecture is the art and science of mapping tool features onto your organization and not the other way around. Right? What we find is that many organizations, or most, don't take the time to do this, and they end up with kind of an unintentional information architecture, right? Which is, hard to use. Few people understand it. It can be very difficult and expensive to repair, right? And I usually ask for folks to raise their hands if they actually have a formal IA process across their companies. And at Summit, I was actually surprised because it was the first time in giving this talk in many years that a few people actually raised their hand. But it was only a few. So if you're not doing this, don't feel like you're alone out there. Now, it's a fairly complex topic, and we don't have time on this session to go through it, but I'd like to point you to a resource that we have on our website. It's a 25-minute webinar that introduces that concept in more detail and talks about what you can do about it and how to think about it. So you might want to check that out. Okay, next strategy. This one addresses the problem where you've got users putting content in their personal areas or their project areas or over here in their team areas or departmental spaces or wherever, and there's not really an easy way for others to find it and to see what's going on and what's current. So a good thing to think about here are some tools you can use like the recently updated or blog post macros, the popular macros. There's tools like rotating banners. If you're using Bricket add-ons, we've got a whole lot more options for seeing what's going on as well as engaging with that current content. But it is important to think about how you're solving that. Okay, one more strategy is the question of how can you keep your content fresh and relevant over time, right? Here, there's basically 4 strategies we can look at. Using workflows to make sure that information gets to the right people in the right order. We like to think about the act of publishing, which is the art of making sure that you're displaying information or revealing information when it's ready. A related concept is actually a scheduled content where you can maybe have content that comes online November 1st and comes offline at the end of the month because it's no longer relevant. And finally, and I think this one has the biggest impact on the toxicity scale, is the ability to have a review and archiving of stale content, maybe stuff that hasn't been edited for a number of months and needs to be reviewed, and it doesn't get reviewed, so it goes away. Now, these are all things that you can add to Confluence using add-ons. There's several options from a bunch of vendors. Bricket, of course, has one. We have an all-in-one solution called Content Flow that solves these problems. Okay, and the final strategy I want to talk about is really one that I think addresses all 4 toxic questions that we looked at once. It's the use of consistency. So the idea is if you have consistency in your site and patterns that people can use, you can help them shape their contribution. So things are easier to add. You will stay more oriented as you're moving from around the site because you have similar patterns or familiar patterns that people can recognize. And if you're using templates or blueprints, you can move a lot faster in generating that content in the first place. Now, you know that Confluence has a template and blueprint facility baked into it, and also we offer a product that allows you to create complex and pre-wired blueprints without coding. Okay, so we've dealt with now the cultural factors that can inhibit user adoption, and we've given you strategies to tackle the problem of information toxicity. But we're not done yet, because there's one small detail left I'd like to talk about, and that is that systems like this can have a lot of moving parts, right? You have the platform software components, you have the tasks that you need to do, there's skills that you need to do them, there's change management, there's training, and on, lots of things to take care of. So what we've done is taken our 10 years of experience working with customers, and we've published a methodology that we use and that you can use to design, build, launch, and operate your collaboration platform. Now, the methodology walks you through 4 important phases, and each phase is targeted at a different slice of your user community, and each has specific activities associated with them that you need to look after. And then associated with each of those, we highlight related reading materials and webinars that we published, along with identify skills that you need to do them, tools that are available to make that easier, and services that are available in that kind of rare case when your team is short on bandwidth or experience. Now, again, all of this is online on our site and is free for you to use to ensure a successful launch. Okay, so congratulations. For real this time, you really do have what it takes to go forth and unlock employee engagement in your enterprise. Okay, so if you're dealing with these issues in your organization, I'd love for you to contact us at solutions@brickit.com. Love to hear what you're facing and what you're doing about it, learn what's working and what's not. Maybe we can trade some ideas. And of course, please surf to the website at brickit.com and check out that methodology and the other resources we have that can help you get started. Thanks for listening.